This is a test of the City of Palatka audio system.
Hey, Kiara, can you hear okay?
Okay, I got it. I understand. Thanks.
It did me this way yesterday.
to the Palatka Redevelopment Agency Budget Workshop on June 7th, 2024. Could, Pastor Mulberry, could you give us the invocation, please? Oh, I didn't do the notice. I'm sorry, we'll do that after.
Yes, I am here. Father, again, we thank you for another day. Thank you for how good you've been thus far. We give you praise and glory for your kindness towards us. We pray, God, your blessing upon this meeting as they come together to share for the furtherance and the better of this city. We ask for the wisdom of God to be upon the heads of the leadership, God, that you might show and give directions in what things we must do. We give you praise for all that you're doing for us now. It is in Jesus' name. Thank God. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Jackson, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor,
Ms. Krantz, could you read the special? Yes,
sorry, we don't have a quorum.
it's a workshop.
Do we not have to have a quorum in a workshop?
No. No. Special call workshop notice, please, Ms. Krantz.
Thank you so much.
Give me just a second. To members, Tammy McCaskill, Will Jones, Justin Campbell, Rufus Borum, Teresa Jackson, and Terry Turner. You're notified the special call workshops of the Community Redevelopment Agency are hereby called for the following dates. The purpose of the workshops is to discuss the fiscal year 2025 budget. June 7th, 2:30, June 20th, 2:30. Signed, Roberta M. Correa, Mayor.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Thank you again. Commissioner Tammy McCaskill is not present for the record. Commissioner Will Jones, not present for the record. Commissioner Justin Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Rufus Borum is not present for the record. Member Teresa Jackson.
Present.
Commissioner Terry Turner is not present for the record, and Roberta Correa.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As noted, you do not have a quorum, but this is a workshop.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'm going to open the floor to public comments. Is there anybody here for public comments? Please give your name and address for the record and 3 minutes, please.
Hi, Cheryl Roach, 312 Dodge. I just want direction as to how this is going to occur. If this is a public workshop, I mean, are we going to be able to interact, or is it going to be discussion between the members that are present of the CRA board and the city employees?
I will defer to Ms. West, but we are obviously going to be looking for public input for this budget since it involves the CRA. Ms. West?
Correct. Also, this is just one of several workshops that are going to be held for both the city budget and the CRA budget. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity before the close of the fiscal year to weigh in as a member of the public on the budget items. So this is the first meeting, so it's a good opportunity to get briefed on the issues, but there will be plenty of opportunities moving forward to engage.
But in terms of a give or take, which is kind of what you asked in this particular
Yeah,
meeting, I think we can, open the floor again at a different point in time if there are some issues, or should we just leave it as right now, get information gathering and wait for the future?
My suggestion is to keep it at an information gathering stage at this point, because we're all just learning what the proposed budget is going to be, and then weigh in with commentary as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
okay, well then, since I still have some time, I'm going to say what I have been saying for years and years and years. We need a CRA director. The disconnect between the CRA and the historic board and the planning board and code enforcement is huge. And I don't know if any of you paid any attention to the historic board meeting yesterday, but there is a specific circumstance where somebody who bought a historic home who may not have done what he was supposed to do, it was allowed to perpetuate for years, and he was not treated well. And this is why we can't revitalize this town. It happens too much. It happens too much. If we had maybe a dedicated CRA director, which you're sitting on close to $1 million, you could pay for one for years and years. They might be able to coordinate a little bit pertaining to the historic districts that are important, that are a part of Palatka, and need to be treated as such. It's very, very, very important to me. And in previous years, there have been times when the residents of the historic districts could make suggestions in an open meeting prior to this workshop, and that didn't happen this year, and probably because it never was listened to. It was never taken, nothing that was ever recommended by any residents ever came to fruition. So it's just a situation where I really do feel, as Ms. Carty says, that you guys are going to lose this. You're going to lose your CRA funding, and it will fall on the city. You can't blame somebody that bought a property for the lack of communication between all of the various departments that they have to navigate now to try to bring back these historic homes. It's exceedingly frustrating as a resident. And Robbie, I know you've been here a lot longer than I am, and I was never told anything about the historic district. I was never told anything about what I need to do to start to make any improvements on my home. And I believe, I call him Ben. Ben is the gentleman who bought the property at Laurel, and is it 4th or 5th? I believe him. He was wrong to not get permits. Yes, of course. But once that roof started going up, somebody from the city should have spoken to him, and nobody
Thank
did.
you.
Nobody did. Thank you.
Is there anybody else here for public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments and we'll move on to regular business. Presentation and discussion, the summary of the CRA funds for fiscal year 2023-2024, and discussion of expenses for CRA funds for fiscal year 2024-2025. Ms. Carty, Mr. Bell, Ms. Carty.
And while Ms. Carty's coming to the podium, she's already there. I just wanted to refer the board back to the overview document that was shared yesterday that indicated that we are hoping to have some outputs and outcomes from this, which would primarily focus on getting feedback, as you mentioned earlier, from the board on what you would like to see reflected in the goals and objectives based on this budget, both from the board as well as from the community. So,
Thank you, Ms. Carty.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, everyone that's here. Thank you. So I guess to start out, I just want to say that we're starting this process a little earlier than compared to last year, a portion of it, like being able to give you some kind of this detail that we've given, such as the worksheet. We did this a whole month earlier this year compared to last year. Last year, the first breakout of expenditures, you really did not get that until July 20th. And so our intent this year was to try to get more guidance from the board as to what you're looking for so that we could include it in the budget. So I just kind of wanted to express that first of all, and I'll go right into the other part of it where you can go back to the front, please, to the very first sheet. But I just wanted to make that comment. So I think everybody kind of knows like what the budget process is all about. You go to the next sheet, please. So, this workshop is where we get a chance to do a lot of communicating, primarily trying to get guidance from the dais as a tool for planning, implementing, controlling activities for optimum utilization of our limited resources. So whoever's directing the CRA is just saying, can I speak? Give me some direction so I can achieve the goals. And that's down below, you see a little picture there that's kind of letting you know what the process is for budgeting. Sunny, if you could move it, or yes, thank you. So the budgeting process is that we get a lot of data and we try to let us understand. We get data from the departments, from our leaders here, and we try to come up with some form of implementation. So next page, the common steps, identify the budget goals. We look at the economic, social, environment. Goals are set based upon the resources. We evaluate and review costs by looking at personnel, operating, and capital. We pay attention if there was salary to what the requirements would be. And basically, we use a zero-based budgeting module, and that simply means that revenues equal expenditures. And we have to have the approval of not just city manager, but the commissioners and the board itself. And then we also get the input, like that next page, where we have, like the input from the neighborhoods, like letting us understand. And once that budget is approved, then it's action and let's get it done. And so Palatka is very interesting. I did a lot of research in order to put this together, basically looking at the number of districts we have and the developments that have been taking place over the past 5 years, and looking at the strategic location of this city. So we have a lot of opportunities. We're only 28 miles from St. Augustine and Palm Coast, 47 miles from cities like Jacksonville, Gainesville, and Daytona. So we're unique in that we have a lot of opportunities. The next page kind of gave an idea of how we're being impacted. If you go to page 7, please, right there, go to that, right, those numbers. Exactly. We're showing taxable values and how our property values have increased. If you could go a little bit right there. Thank you. And so we started back in 1994 with our CRA. And so looking at the past 5 years from 2019 to currently 2024, and you can see that the North District is 28 acres. And it's in 2019, the value was 3.9 million. Now we're currently at 5.4 mil. And we increased in value 8% when compared to last year. And looking at the Central Business District, is 200 acres. And even though we started at 14 mil, 2019, we were at 39.7 mil, and currently we're at 54.3 mil, the value of the property. And the value increasing is our revenue stream. And so last year, when you look at the 54 mil, it increased by 15% compared to that prior number of 47.2 mil. And then finally, South District, 49 acres. When we started in 1994, the value was 3.2 mil, and currently it's at 15.8 mil. The increment is 16% compared to the prior year. So we're obviously doing something right because the values are going up. And so that's what the budgeting process is all about, hoping to protect it and continue it. Looking back, I put something out, I'm not sure if you all have, and where I looked at all of the projects that had been completed. And we've completed many projects in 2019, 20, 21, and 22. So I'm not sure if you all have that, but I'll continue on. And so I went on to 2023 to 2024, 24, 25. Yeah. And so that's where we are now, relevancy. So we have a few projects, not many, like we did previously. So we only have 3 or 4 or 5. So prior year we had 3. And what we see are getting done or ongoing is the Philip Randolph Transportation, Building Improvement Cost Share, and Sidewalks. And then in the year that we're projecting, we expect to have maybe 5. And that's St. John's, the side streets, the Oak Street, downtown lighting. So that's 4. So my intent today was to really just kind of inform you of what CRA has going on, The next page, Sunny Place. There's one more page, I think. Okay. So I just kind of put a number of things there, like, of course, the whole plan is to prepare an operating budget, to, determine unused funds from prior years, develop projects that will continue to attract increased business openings, beautify downtown, thinking about bike paths, dog waste collection sites, pet-friendly stores, increase economic development, dog parks, walking trail, activate vacant land and buildings to create community amenities, target funds towards high-need communities and reinforce local capacity and strengthen social cohesion and build community wealth. So essentially, that's the initiative part. And if we can go on to the numbers. And so the draft that we have there, the primary focus of the draft was just to give you a snapshot of what it could possibly look like. We do realize that this is at the front end of gathering information. These numbers are going to become more perfected. The revenue stream that you see up there that's projected for the budget, and I called it budget in process because we're still gathering information, mentioning it's a whole month ahead of where we normally prepare budgets. So this is an estimation based upon the growth that we're seeing annually. So we do expect that we will receive more money than we did last year. Last year, the year we're living in right now, we received $819,000. So we're on page 1 of the numbers, and that's where you see total $819,422. That's the year we're living in now. So we expect to receive $900,000 in the year that's coming. I pretty much estimated the cash forward by looking at what we have brought in and what we project to spend, and then also looking at the prior year cash balance. So given the process that was used, we expect that next year budget is going to be less than the year we're living in right now, because we did actually use, there was that 800,000 that we expect to transfer, the 865,000 over into Better Place. And so that really costs us to use some of the resources from this current year. That's what we expect to do by the end of the fiscal year. So the most important thing to understand is that the budget is expected to be less for the new year because we are utilizing funds in this year. And so going on to page 2, so page 1 was just looking at revenues. Page 2 is the downtown district. And last year's budget, the year we're living in now, was $500,000, 262 for operating. And for this coming budget, that will be 24-25, it's going to be less. We expect the budget to be less, and it'll be 435,000. So it'll be 65,000 less. And again, these are just the first draft. And with your input, we will have numbers that are more reflective of what you want to have done this year. Going to page 3, a continuation of downtown. And so for the budget for 2024, notice we have like 985,000. But for the new budget, we only have 122 because that 867,000 transferred to Better Place for streets. We are projecting that we will, at this stage of the game, we expect to spend that in this current year. And so that would be one of the reasons why next year's budget is less, because we're now utilizing the funds. So what we expect for downtown, if, given that we make that transfer of 867,000, we expect to spend $1,123,140. That's that downtown budget. And next year's budget would be about 867,000, with 309,000 being set aside for contingency reserve. Moving on to page 4, that's South Historic. And so if we go to budget of the year we're living in right now to the very bottom, it has 438,468. For next year's budget, we expect 457,000. So it's a small increase of 19,000. And so if we were to go back to the column that says projection 2024 for South Historic, we project for the year to spend 185,000. With the Tillman, I guess the largest item in the South Historic would be the budget that we now have set aside in this year for Tillman House, that 121,000 there. So we do expect to spend some of it in this year. At this point, we think we'll spend about 48,000, with the remainder 72,000 going into next year's budget. And again, this is budgeting. These numbers will become more finite as we live through it. By the time we get to a month from now, we'll be able to present a much better budget. And finally, North Historic, page 5. Okay, so the budget for 2024 is 126,000 for North Historic, 126,000. We have spent 34,000 for North side, that North Historic side. And we expect to hopefully spend an additional 52,000, mainly because we believe that we're going to spend the capital improvements of 45,000 up above. So next year's budget for North Historic, we're projecting 144,000. And so that's the conclusion, to look at the numbers. And I will entertain any questions that you might have.
Anybody have any questions of Ms. Connie? Commissioner Campbell? Ms. Jackson? Commissioner Turner? I'm sorry, what? Is your mic on? Yeah, it is. Maybe because I was, kind of my head was turning the way, I'm sorry. Commissioner Turner, do you have any questions of Ms. Connie? Commissioner Turner?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I wanted to let the board know that Commissioner McCaskill was going to be attending via Zoom, but she's running behind, as well as Commissioner Jones.
Okay,
Commissioner Jones is on the line.
okay.
Got it.
I have no question.
Yes, go ahead.
I have no
I
questions.
have no questions. I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I do have a question with regards to what was brought up. I know in previous, there was a conversation with regards to CRA, possibilities of having a CRA manager. With regards to that, is that something that could possibly be taken in consideration as we project to see if it is something that we roll with, that money is already in place? Or I just want to make sure it's accounted for, just in case the decision of the commission or the board is to move in that direction and not
Yes,
have
sir.
to go back and reallocate.
Okay, so my recollection from last year is that we took the funds that we had originally placed in for the manager that we was hoping as a new position with the fringe benefits. And because that was not immediately approved to go forward, the funds remained in the budget, but I believe that we moved it to reserve. If that's my recollection, correct?
Is that accurate?
It was reallocated to other projects.
That's what I
but
thought.
We can include it.
We can
Right,
add
but
that
we
position.
are at this stage of the game, whatever input you give us, we can move forward with.
I would like to have it in there for consideration.
Yes, sir.
Just so we wouldn't have to, better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Okay, noted.
And last year it was a combination, which it's not, would not need to be any longer since Main Street has been resurrected from the private sector. So it would be completely a full-time CRA director. We're talking full-time position, correct? Yes.
Okay, and question, should we send anything out to you? Or just the next time we come in with the presentation, perhaps have it identified?
I mean, I think, personally, I think that we know, since, again, Main Street has taken on its own legs, this will be solely about this. And I know that previously, if you want to send out what we've previously received with regards to that particular position, but I just think having it built in, I don't think there's a real need to kind of go rehash what we've already
Yes.
talked about substantially.
Okay, I understand.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, do you have any thoughts or input?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones? Any input or thoughts about the budget?
No, I don't.
Okay. Commissioner Turner? Commissioner Turner? Okay, thank you. Well, if you pipe in, that will be fine. I have, and of course, we're going to have a series of these, and that's fine. I have thought that perhaps it would be, since we do have the funding, to increase the public art line item. Has been historically, it's at 20,000 for last year. And maybe if we could increase that again to bring before the group to see if that's something for consideration. Larimer repairs, is there any room for funding for the Larimer Art Center repairs, which it does need some love as well? These are just ideas I'm throwing out. There's a, again, the group will have to
Thank you.
discuss. We have the building improvement grant, the big grant. Thoughts about any others like facade? I don't know. There are different grants out there. Other communities have others that, and we had a facade, obviously it would need to be updated and funding attached, but different avenues like that. What are we doing with the Belton property? That's a question I have now that we no longer have a building. And is this a source of funding for future thoughts about that? Other people know best. I would have to look at the plan in the past, but I don't know if we're changing that with that property. These are just some questions I have.
No, I'm questioning this. Does that property fall within the CRA?
Yes,
It does.
it does. It does. It does. It goes to the tracks. The CRA goes to the tracks.
Yes.
Yes, it does. And to Madison. North.
Central.
It's in the central tip.
Yeah, it's kind of,
And then my last thing,
No,
again,
too.
throwing out more stuff. The possibility of listing downtown on the National Local Historic Register and funding for that through the CRA to make that process happen through an RHP to those companies that specialize in doing that versus doing buildings piecemeal as has been happening downtown over time. Those are just some of my thoughts. Do we have anything else in regards to the CRA?
Turn left onto South Lawrence Boulevard.
My hand is up.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Jones.
The question I have, you mentioned the Belton property and the plans, have they changed? I think maybe the plans need to be communicated to the public of what the original plans were or are before we talk about changing them. And that that Belton property, I thought, was already included in the grant, the grant that includes the transportation hub. All that is encompassed in that area. Unless I'm mistaken, I would like somebody chime in, assistant city manager, on that in regards to the plans.
Mr. Bill, Mr. Griffiths can come up and give us
go ahead,
information,
Mr.
please.
Griffith.
Yes, I'm sorry we don't have a graphic up
But just in general terms, where the Belton property is and the adjacent, what was previously held and is still held, private property, which fronts on 11th Street, in the A. Philip Randolph Transportation Hub renderings, there was a couple different versions, and from a conceptual perspective, it was shown as any combination of a mixed use of commercial and residential. So there is an envelope there, so to speak, that at some point the CRA and the city will have to give some guidance on what they want to see there, be it public or private improvements.
Okay, thank you. And
Were
also
there
at this
any
time,
grant
there is quite a bit of
implications?
federal funding available for going green. And that might be a good, with CRA funds, a good place to set up a, to do some construction that is green and as an example of being more environmentally conscious than we have historically been.
Okay, so I think, Mr. Bell, you wanted me to.
Sure. I think one of the questions that Commissioner Jones had was about whether or not there were any grant implications remaining with the Price Martin building within that transportation hub.
No, we have not encumbered that property with any grant requirements. Speaking of the Belton property and the two adjacent parcels that the city/CRA acquired in the past 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions, Commissioner Jones, or statements? Commissioner Turner?
Not a question, but a comment that I feel that we should go ahead and make these plans so that we will know what direction we are headed. You asked a good question, Mayor, but I think we need to go ahead and solidify some type of idea of where we're going, or what we're going to do with those properties.
Thank you. Commissioner Turner, did you have your hand up?
She just took
No.
Mr. Jones' hand down.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anything else in regards to the CRA budget workshop?
I do believe that
1 minute.
notwithstanding public comment, we did not account for a presentation or input from SDPC with Mr. Ball in the audience.
Yeah, well, it wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't, but if you'd like to come up and then I'll. Mr. Roach.
Okay.
I can come up.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, staffers, everybody listening everywhere across the world. I hope you're having a good day. There is a budget increase request for the SBDC services from 20,000 to 25 for this next year. There's several root causes for that. The first is the cost of inflation. Everybody's cost is up about 25%. And that's what this is, about 25%. It's the funding from the University of North Florida is actually being reduced a little bit. So that's another reason behind the increase. And then the third main thing for the SBDC is for the county buy-in, I guess is the way to say it. When we have offices in outlying counties other than Duval, they call it a buy-in, I guess is the way to say it. It's 50 grand a year now as a minimum for that. So through the increase in the CRA funding and an increase with the county, we'll be close to that. We won't quite be at that. Some of the positive things about this, I'm not sure when the last time the SBDC had an increase. I'm not sure when it was actually established here, but I think it's probably been 8 or 10 years or better, maybe 15. But I'm not sure. It did go through the Chamber of Commerce for a while, I believe. And then it kind of went to the county for a little while. And then I think it settled in mostly in the CRA. But this still allows us to provide the services. Just wanted to bring that up to speed real quick. That's a full-time business consultant. At this point in time, that's me. Access to the government procurement specialist. If you remember, we have annual workshops on government procurement for you. We have web consultants. We're bringing in guest speakers. We host networking events like the CRA workshop or networking event we had, 2 weeks ago. Hosting workshops. We've got one with the SBA coming up here soon that I'm happy to tell you about. On Monday, I believe, is our regular CRA scheduled meeting. We have lots of marketing reports available, online educational services and that sort of thing. So it is a request to go up roughly 20% or so, to go from 20 to 25. Are there
Thank you.
any questions on
Any
that?
questions? No?
Thank
you.
Thank you very much.
Apologies for not including that on the
That's
agenda.
okay. Thank you for mentioning it. Ms. Roach?
Hi, yeah, I'm looking for some clarification on the accountant reports. Did I hear correctly that the budget here now, this year, prior to fiscal and the 800,000 is being transferred to Better Place?
That's the budget.
It's just,
Yes,
it-
I appreciate
it's a yes or no
So,
question.
Jonathan,
Yeah, but I'd like to get some clarity. So.
Okay, well, I'm gonna stand here.
Okay, that's fine. So that transfer is related specifically to the St. John's Avenue Streetscape project. Right now, that's broken into 3 phases, with the first phase being complete, which was the intersections. The second phase is getting ready to move to construction in early July. That's the resurfacing. That 867 is for phase 2 and phase 3. Most likely at the next budget workshop, you'll see that transfer less because we'll have firmer numbers with phase 2, and we'll be budgeting for the balance of that transfer in next year for phase 3, which is the sidewalks. Sorry.
Okay. I kind of thought this was all like already paid for with grants and other, okay. Well, I'm a little like taken back by this because this has been discussed for how many years? You know, and I'm not opposed to this happening at all. I mean, if the $867,000 is being transferred to Better Place, which will go in turn to work on the St. John's streetscaping project, I'm fine with that. But clarification, sunshine, I don't think most people are even remotely aware of what Better Place is. The only reason why I ever even remotely heard of it is because I've had private meetings with Jonathan and he broke it down a little bit for me. We need to be transparent pertaining to how we're going to redevelop our city and how we're going to make things better. And I'm hoping, that our new city manager will hopefully be on top of that, and I think that's part of the disconnect that we have throughout the city is because people aren't aware of what's going on, and then each of the city commissioners have their own little pet projects that they push. But the big picture is what people really do care about. And I firmly do believe that. So I appreciate, you being so forthcoming with your presentations.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's very educational and I wish that more people were here and I hope Zoom land is paying attention. But that is, as they say on the streets, a BFD.
Yes.
We're talking a lot of money and it should be discussed openly and freely more so. And so thank you so much. You
My
are
pleasure.
such an asset to do that.
Thank you.
And I do have suggestions as well pertaining to things that we could possibly do for the city. I think that solar lights illuminating the present murals would be a very nice project for the CRA. I recently took a trip to Lakeland, and they, as many cities, have an art project where they're the Swan City. So there are swans that are art displays sporadically throughout the city that various artists paint. And I didn't really look into it that much, but I think Chicago did it first. They did cows, and it's something that is we could do bass or we could do crabs, which would be a very, very nice thing for our city. And the last thing is word on the street that Hiawatha might be sold to Johnny from Bass. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I hope that everybody in the room is familiar with Hiawatha. I know that Robbie is because she's spent a lot of time on that. And And
Oh, you're
don't judge.
talking about Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark, Noah's
Okay,
Ark.
that's why I
Okay,
had that
Noah's
quick
Ark.
question.
Sorry, I always called Hiawatha. Noah's Ark. Sorry, clarification.
That's
Noah's
okay,
Ark,
that's
which
okay.
is the boat that is docked at Skip and Gossie's Marina in huge disrepair. It now has a tarp on it. And word on the street is that Johnny might be buying it to put in one of his Bass Pro Shops. I don't know if it's true or not, but the point being is that these are things that should be discussed openly. This is something that Robbie has procured money. It was on that list of projects to save. Nothing has been done with this true relic for years and years and years. And my idea that comes, 2 a.m., don't judge. But you're all looking for something to do with the land swap, if that comes through, which I'm hoping will, with Charlie Douglas and the St. John's River Center. So right now, that car dealer, parking lot, whatever it is, and the adjacent building could actually become a museum for Noah's Ark. And the boat could be dry docked in the parking lots and restored, and the museum could talk about the history of that and all of our history. And it's such a visible location. It would really put us on the map. And that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Is there anything additionally on the CRA budget workshop? Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Turner, anything else? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a brief recess and we're going to come back to the next meeting.
Commissioner, are you on?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. We are going to start. I see both Commissioner McCaskill and Commissioner Jones are there. Commissioner Campbell will be tuning in at some point. So let's call this meeting to order. Welcome to the City Commission Budget Workshop on June 7th, 2024. Ms. Creans, could you read the workshop notice, please?
Certainly. To Commissioners Tammy McCaskill, Rufus Borum, Justin Campbell, Will Jones. A special called workshop of the Palatka City Commission is hereby called to commence on June 7, 2024 at 4 o'clock or as soon thereafter as the Community Redevelopment Agency. The purpose of the workshop is to go over the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Signed, Roberta M. Correa, Mayor.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Certainly. Commissioner Tammy McCaskill.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Campbell, I believe, is in transit. Commissioner Will Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Rufus Borum is excused. Mayor Robbie Correa.
Present.
Madam Mayor, as you know, we do not have a quorum, but that's fine because this is a workshop.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to open the floor to public comments. Is there anybody here for public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments and on to regular business. Presentation and discussion, summary of fiscal year 2023, 2024, and discussion of expenses for fiscal year 2024, 2025. Ms. Cardy?
I would reiterate what I said before, but everybody was pretty much present when I said it before. So,
I was not present.
okay, essentially what I had commented was that the objectives, going back to the overview sheet, the objectives and outcomes that are desired for this are feedback from the commission on projects, plans, objectives, goals.
Thank you.
Ms. Cardy?
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, all that are in attendance. So today what we wanted to do is just kind of start looking at the budget. The primary intent is to receive direction more than anything from the commissioners. To also want to make a note that we are further along in the process than we normally are. Last year, our first budget workshop was July 20th. So we're already like June 7th, and we're already working on the budget. The good part about it is that it gives us direction from the commissioners. We do need to accumulate more information in order to present a well-developed budget, such as revenue analysis, salaries, et cetera. So that kind of information is still coming in. Okay, so just wanted to say that. And so the budget workshop format is the city manager and myself present an overview of the budget process. And it's a working document constantly being updated until it's a final budget. And go to the next page, please. So what is a budget? It's a tool for planning, implementing, controlling activities, understanding that our resources are scarce. It involves planning, forecasting, monitoring, and the city of Palatka uses the top-down approach. And what that means is that the budget is developed pretty much with senior management input based upon the city's objectives. The departmental managers are assigned responsibility for its successful implementation. So we look at personnel, operating capital, and our directors will come forth and they're going to say, I need money to run this department like you want it to be ran. So that's why we do the budgeting process. Next page. So budgeting process have some common steps like identifying the budget goals. We're on the next page. The goals are considered based upon economic resources. We evaluate, we review the costs of the city. We look at trends and analysis. We pay close attention to salary requirements such as step and grade or union agreements or COLA. And our capital expenditures are planned and included in the budget. After all of that, we look at the assumptions to be sure that they're in line with reality. A thorough review of the budget is essential, and revenues must equal expenses. So that is called zero-based budgeting, and that's what we do. And the approval must be given by both city management and the commissioners with the community buy-in. And once that happens, we have a budget approved and we can move forward. So speaking uniquely about Palatka, so I kind of wanted to look at the past and the future and our past history as a city. We've gone through a lot. We started out with the Indians or Native Americans, the Timucuans, and we've had all kind of building. St. John, 310 miles of there. There was a time when we were the leader in cattle, lumber, shipbuilding. Some point we were even larger than Jacksonville, and we were a trading post. And the name Palatka means the crossing, and that was because of the cattle that was crossing over to get slaughtered. So we're in a unique position to continue our rich history of building and development and the apparent projected future. And I found it to be interesting that the US Census stated that our population, our economic level has changed, that from 2017 to 2018, poverty was slashed in half. And I'm not sure we're aware of that. And that child poverty was cut by 2/3. And our median household income rose by nearly a quarter. So that means that the population is changing. Home values rose by nearly 10%, and it's rising even steadily. We saw recently that it's been rising even up to 15%. So we're in the midst of a lot of positive changes. Palatka is extremely diverse, and so we hope to move forward. So going to fiscal year 2024 budget priorities. I just moved rather quickly because you have this packet so you can read it in detail. But mainly we were looking at continuing pursuing smart city initiatives, continue. Oh, let me read yours. Setting city of Palatka goals and priorities which align with the city's mission, vision, and values. The budget should reflect the commissioner's goals. This operating budget that we're looking at, what I did globalistically, I did 4% increase in everything, just so we can get the process started. It is not specific as it will become when you receive the next draft. If you can move, because I'm going to read from here, continue the beautification of the city and our TIF district, focus our operating budget on critical capital requirements, public enhancement, public outreach, community projects, infrastructure, ensure that the community concerns are being addressed, such as mental health, homelessness, animal safety, affordable housing, maintain adequate staffing levels, and develop plans for employee retention. These are all of the objectives that we're hoping that the budget will encompass, to focus on community events and activities that will build the educational and income levels of our residents, or at least increase the quality of life. And then revenue maximization, that needs to also be a focus of the budget of city-owned properties and city-operated programs. That's it. You can move it. Thank you. Oh, it won't move? Okay, so go to that next handout. We have another handout that they received where no, that's not it. All right, well, then I'll just talk about it. So when the commissioners met with the city manager and myself, I'm on this one, work, play, live, and she's saying that she don't see it. It's under the city budget workshop. Well, it doesn't, I don't have, no, it's not the detail. It's it's the document. It says work play. No, here it is. Right. You don't see it. It doesn't have the page. Yeah.
I'm not finding it either, but maybe I'm just missing it.
So it was the first thing that was uploaded with the detail. So I guess we did kind of see it though as we met individually, and what it talked about was the 4 core areas: renewal, infrastructure, services, and community. And that was transportation for citizens, code enforcement, affordable housing, infrastructure, which was sidewalk, traffic signal, water and sewer, city hall, streets, and then services, which was construction and email subscription. It should be behind that one, I think. Okay, so okay. So this, well, that's not good. So the trend analysis of revenue, what it showed was from 2018 to 2022, our general fund went from 12 million up to 17 million. And airport went from 800,000 to 1.2 million. So the revenue, that's it. That's it. That's all.
It wasn't in the second revised, it was in the first revised. That was how.
Okay. All right. So if you can go about 3 pages in. Right. Yeah, to the trend analysis. That's great. One more page. Right there. And turn it so we can read it.
Okay, got it.
Appreciate it. So basically what I tried to do here is look at 5 years and give you a snapshot of those 5 years. And if you can make it slightly bigger, but they do have it in their packet. Thank you. That's good. So look at general fund, you know, it went from like 12 million to 17.8 million. And water went from 5.9 million to 8.9 million. This is, you know, 2018, 19 to 22, 23. Sanitation went from 1.8 million to 3.6 million. And this is in revenue. The most important thing for us to get from this is that over a 5-year period of time, our revenue is increasing. That was the main concept that I wanted us to understand. And if we go to the next page, expenses for operating, and the trend is the same, you know, that is increasing. General is 13 mil and went up to 18 mil. Water, 4.7 mil up to 7.6 mil. And the only one that's an anomaly is sanitation. You know, sanitation, go back to expenses operating. Look at sanitation. I mean, 2018, it was 1.9 million. And now we're at 2022 and it's gone down. So that's the only one that basically had a different pattern compared to the other expenses of operation. The next page gives us a snapshot of expenses capital. And this is an area that, you know, the city has been really trying to make sure that we spend funds with the infrastructure, et cetera. And we can see that we have really improved in this area. And if I had to say why, I would say because we've secured grants that have given us funds to do so. So for instance, look at 2018, you know, I'm just going to look at water and airport. Airport in 2018 was spending 437,000, and the most recent year, airport is at 2 million in capital expenditures. And I would say 95% is funded by grant. Water, look at that, 16,000 in 2018. That means we weren't investing in our system as at the level that we're doing now, which is 1,084,000 in 2022. I was just thinking that it's important for us to have an idea of what we have been doing and what we're currently doing and what the commissioners want us in the city management, what do you want us to do? And finally, the last one was expenses interest. And what this kind of shows is that we're paying off some of the loans. Like, I mean, 2018 general fund was paying out 637,000 in interest. In 2022, we're down to 296,000. And that's going to change maybe, I believe, when I think about it, that in this year alone, we secured maybe 4 million in debt because of the police cars, the public works lift machine, and also the new building for public works. So yes, the interest in general fund will increase, but it won't increase to the level that it was in 2018. And so that's the information that I kind of wanted to present before we looked at line by line. And if that is of interest to the commissioners, we will move forward with the numbers.
Go ahead.
Okay, move on. Okay. That's still our, if you close that bookmark panel, you can increase the size. Thank you. That might help them in seeing it. So we're starting out with the commissioner's budget. And I'm just going to start with personnel. So if you look at budget line, the column that says 2024, you can see that the personnel cost is 228,000. And remember, this is not the fine-tuned budget. This is not the budget that's going to reflect what the salaries really will be projected to be because of our grade and, how do you say it? Step and grade study. So once we have that imported, you will have a better number for the personnel costs. But just using a globalistic 4% for all the items in the budget, just so we can start the process. We've gone from a 228,000 to 237. And the operating costs for commissioners is 106. And we have it at a higher number of 263. No, so it's 253,000. Oh, only 10,000 more, 263,000. So you see the 10,145 more. Okay, next page, page 2, please. And so for the budget, this is for the interns. This section, that 24,000, that's what that's for, in case you want to remember. So we're gone from 25 to 26, just an increase of 1,000. And so the total budget for the commissioners, 569,000, but we expect to go to 592. And then City Hall. So we're going to have a lot of, once I put into the budget the changes that the department heads have given in, the numbers are going to be different. Some of the items that we're looking at changing, even than what you're looking at now, is separating the repairs, operating repairs versus capital repairs or improvements. So we will have 2 new lines in this area: City Hall maintenance and annex building maintenance, and then City Hall capital and annex building capital. It's not there yet, but it will be. So looking at this budget, and also what's important is how much have we spent year to date? So in City Hall, if you look at the column that says actual as of May 31, 2024, the amount is 263,478. So that's what we've spent so far. We anticipate we'll spend at least 395,000. Okay. The third page, city manager department. So the budget for personnel, 544,000, going to maybe 565. The operating expenses are very low, like 28,000. Anticipate going to 29,000. If you go to the next page, city clerk. So the budget for the year we're living in, 140,000. And remember, these numbers are going to be different once I put in the department information individually, more information from department heads, 146,000. Operating on page 5 is 42,000. So the total budget for the city clerk for the year we're living in, 183,000. Did you go to page 5? Yes, okay. And so we anticipate at least 190. The IT department, information technology. So that department, the current year budget is 357,383. 4% would make it 371,000. And then finance on page 6, the budget is 474,000, but we expect it to go to 511 with the overall 4%. Well, actually, that is personnel. When you add in operating costs of 42,000 for this year total budget for finance is 616,000 and expecting it to go to 641,000. Facilities maintenance on page 6, personnel, the budget for the year we're living in for 34,000. 4% increment for 52,237. On page 7, operating for facilities maintenance for this year budget is 65,000. We did anticipate a capital outlay. We haven't spent that yet. This facility maintenance also reimbursed, I believe, utility for 13,000. And then we did have debt also. So the total budget for this year for facilities maintenance is 548,000. Another item that will be perfected by the time you get the second draft will be the impact of our loans, the interest, and the principal. So some of the loans will be falling off, and that'll be perfected with the next one, the next real draft. The real draft that you got. On page 8, we're looking at the Department of Human Resources and their personnel costs for this budget is 187,000, anticipate going to 195,000 at least. And for the department, the cost for this year budget is 236,000 at the bottom of page 8. And 4% increment would be 245,000. And in this budget, for this department, you can anticipate that we're looking at software that will enhance the performance of this particular department. So that's one of the things that they're looking at. Water taxi on page 9. The budget for this year is 65,129. And when you compare it to the actual expenditures of 2022, 2023, you notice they're like 30-something thousand, but now we're doing more maintenance. That's what we anticipate. So from the 65,000, we expect to go to 67,000 for the water taxi. Jenkins gym or location is changing a lot. For the budget for this year, the personnel or the operating was 71,600. And we plan to go to 74,000, but there are items, more information that has to be considered in the Jenkins gym, much more. Because now the location is more becoming operative. And so there would be costs related to programming and finalizing the renovation of that location that's not reflected here. Legal counsel, this is our first year, the year we're living in, of having a full-time attorney on site. And so even though the prior years are different, but so this year the personnel budget was 243,000. Next year, we expect 253,000. Operating expenses, naturally, it went down because in prior years, the contracted part-time service was reflected in operating, and now we don't have that because we have a full-time attorney. So operating costs has been reduced for the budget that we're living in from 86,000 down to 18,000. And so for next year, we're anticipating operating expenditures of almost 20,000. Our total budget for the department, 262. For the year we're living in, 273,000 for the year that's coming. Other government services on page 11. Currently, so there are going to be changes in this budget because we're looking at different movements within the city. Like for instance, well, the liability insurance is a material cost. If you notice the budget for 2024, liability insurance is 447,000 of the 553,000. We also had the Blue Crab event that's included here. Workers' comp is included here. So our expectation is that it's going to increase from the 553 to 575,000, but we do have movement that will be going on, such as we're considering maybe fireworks would be moved to the cultural arts section. Last year, we had a budget for land purchase for 46,000, and then we actually spent 45,000 for land purchase. So we are anticipating that we will continue that pattern, but if not, that'll come back to you. On page 12, we're looking at building and zoning. So for the budget we're living in, it's 307,447. We anticipate that it would go to 319. Our operating expenses for the budget 2024 on page 13 is 147,000. So that's going to about 153. So the most important thing about the zoning on page 13, total budget cost 454,000, possibly up to 472,000. And we might be expecting some changes there, such as building officials and things of that nature, but that will be reflected in the next one. Recreation, the salary personnel costs for this budget that we're living in, 241,000, increment up to 250,000. And if you go to page 14, you'll see that we have 521,113 for our entire budget, but that's because we had capital improvement, and that might move over to Jenkins. So there's some movements that will be going on here as well. Police department, starting at the bottom of page 14 and continuing to page 15, personnel costs $3,258,000. And we anticipate a small increment of about 100,000. So that would be 3 million, but they may have, yeah, so that's the police department. There are some changes expected in this budget as well. Continuing to page 16, the operating budget for the police, 515,000 is what we're living under this year. And we expect it to continue in that same vein to about 536,000. And the capital, we're looking at grant funded activity. We're looking at cars coming in. Again, we're on that renewal system. I believe that they get a certain number of cars each year, and they sell out the ones that are really old. And so if we go to page 17, The department costs for police is, this year, we're living under 4,949,000. A small increment, it's anticipated 5,146 of 197,000. That's on page 17. The next item or department is code enforcement. Personnel for this year is 233,000. 4% would bring it to the 242,000. Operating costs continuing on page 18. 47,000. And we're looking at items like abatement, lot cleanup, demolition. We do expect some changes, looking at the legal fees, there may be some changes there. The fire department personnel budget for the year we're living in, 2,608,000. At a minimum, we're looking at 2,700,000, but I believe there are some decision units coming through for positions to be considered. And ending on page 19, the total operating budget is 395,000. And we anticipate 410,000. Capital outlay, the bulk of it is grant funded for this year's budget and likewise for next year's budget, unless there are decision units coming in. And also on page 20, there's more grant activity again for the police department. The total budget for 2024, 3,244,000. 4% would make it 3,374,000. And again, I just want to pause for a second and reiterate that this is just a budget to mainly secure the input from the commissioners to give us guidance. And then as we gain the last bit of information, we expect to receive during the week of June 10th. So hopefully I'll have a better draft by the end of next week or the following week. Okay, so now we're on streets, and the personnel budget is currently 413,000. 4% make it 429,000. We do anticipate some changes in professional services and tree removal, and also in stormwater maintenance. We anticipate changes there. But currently the budget is 764,000. 4% would put it at the 794,000. In the capital outlay, we realize that we need to do more in this area from a budgeting perspective. We need to differentiate between sidewalk repair and sidewalk replacement. Also, we need to do likewise with paving roads. So the budget that you receive after this one will have those new items in there. And so this year budget for capital is 228,000. We know we will anticipate some changes there. On page 22, the total department budget for streets is 1,501,000, with that 4% being 1,561,000. We spent year to date in streets 908,000. So we anticipate to spend at least 1,300,000 by year end. So cemetery, the budget for this year is 100 for operating expenses, 152,350. We're on page 22. Not too much anticipated in changes, so maybe we anticipate 158,000 for this year budget. Cultural services. There may be some changes here, just better allocating costs such as the maintenance for Brunson House. We expect a change there. that might move to facilities maintenance. But right now, the budget for cultural services personnel is 69,000. We anticipate to go to at least 72. And on page 24, our total budget, because of operating budget of 122,000, even though for the current year, we've only spent 35,000. And we do expect to at least get to 52,000 for the year. So the budget for cultural
Ms. Carter, could I
services.
stop right there?
Yes, sir.
May I interrupt? Cultural services, you mentioned about the budget for the salary. How many people is that? The cultural services.
Could you say that again, Commissioner Jones? Oh, I'm sorry, we had trouble understanding you. Could you repeat your question, please?
She mentioned a total of 52,000 or 72,000. And it just, the number caught my attention. And how many people is that for cultural services? Because there's an explanation that I would like to discuss about cultural services.
Okay. So I believe, continue. Okay. Cultural services under personnel, I think that's what you're referring to. That's one person. And that salary is 32,000, and there's additional fringe benefits like overtime or FICA, retirement health. But in actuality, spent as of May 31, the actual expenses is 43,000 that we've spent year to date as of that date. So we anticipate to pay all of the salary, at least spend 60,000 or so. And the budget, we would reflect 72, but again, salary numbers are going to be perfected. It will be utilizing the salary survey that was done, the stepping grade. So that's one person salary.
So could you also explain, as we did our one-on-one, that it's not cultural affairs, it's cultural services, and it's not a total department, because I think that need to be brought out while we're doing this workshop. Because I was totally under the assumption that cultural affairs was a department, and for budgeting purposes, I think they need to be clarified where these salaries are coming from and where people are assigned up under which department, because that was intriguing to me to find out today.
So, Madam Mayor? Sure, thank you. So as it stands now, the budget does not reflect a roll-up for community affairs. What you have in the budget now is individual divisions that are funded according to the budget. So what would be traditionally seen as community affairs would have cultural affairs, would have code enforcement, and have recreation. So in the budget, as is reflected now, there are expenses that are identified for each of those divisions that are part of community affairs. So that is one of the aspects of the budgeting process that I'm working with Ms. Carty that we identified that we may want to look at modifying so that it is more user-friendly in terms of developing the budget based on what we expect to be departments.
And so to add on to that, for instance, well, one of the things that I recommended that we could do immediately is that I would put cultural affairs in the description in our software, ADG. And so therefore, everything that is being managed as cultural affairs going forward, instead of you just seeing cultural services, you would see cultural affairs dash cultural services, or you'll see cultural affairs dash code enforcement, cultural affairs.
You mean community affairs?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank
Yeah,
you. Community affairs. So you understand what I'm saying?
That
So
would be the umbrella.
the umbrella, right, in the description of the account or of that department, I would then put the umbrella name hyphen the division like that. So for the moment, we would have a better understanding of everything that's community affairs.
So to answer one of your questions, Commissioner, the salary of the Director for Community Affairs is
Right.
now housed in the recreation budget.
Exactly.
Okay, because that leads up to my next question. So how did we, when we did I know you guys were not in, you guys were not a part of the city at the time, but this is a question that I would like to have answered through this process. When we did our salary survey and then we started categorizing each employee for each job description, and then we went on to the budget from previous years up to leading up to now, you had a cultural affairs director. I'm just using this as an example, but when we have positions that doesn't have a home, so to speak, or a department, wouldn't that be a little difficult to have them categorized or categorized within a department to have the right job description for the right salary? Wouldn't that be a little difficult?
Yeah, there is a degree of difficulty. It's less user friendly. It would not affect the actual job descriptions per se, but we would depend upon the understanding of the commission when you looked for the salary of a department director or a division manager. You would need to know where to look for it because it's not always intuitive. You would not know to look for Mr. Cutright's salary in recreation. If we were able to reflect as an accounting practice, the community affairs department, you would look for the salary of Mr. Cutright in community affairs, but that's not currently the way it exists. So we're looking at how we can make that adjustment. But your point is a point well taken, that it does create some difficulties in looking at the budget and the budgeting process when you don't know exactly where to look for particular items.
If the mayor and the rest of the commissioners are okay with it, I guess I'm okay with it too, but I wanted to point it out because it is confusing. It's a little misleading, not saying intentionally, but it is misleading when you're going through the budget and you're looking for a cultural affairs department, which what I'm hearing is it doesn't exist. And then the department that has someone was community services, which is one person. It is confusing. I would like to see that it's straightened out during this process, and going forward, we would know. As well as my second question is a comment, and I know this is an exercise to just get us on track, but going forward, I would like to know if we're considering, commission, mayor, going along with the step grade that was brought forth and we adopted, or the cost of COLA raise, because we definitely can't. The COLA raise sound like the 4% across the board, but the step and grade would be a little different. And if we're giving both, I think that should be pointed out up front, and we should know that going into this exercise. All right, thank you.
Sure. If I could respond to that. Sure. So as it stands now, the policy is to follow the step and grade. Any COLA or cost of living adjustment or increase would have to be a separate action of the commission to do that, above and beyond the step and grade process. So what you have in front of you, and as Ms. Carty said, we're going to refine the numbers with regard to salaries, so that you have a more accurate understanding before we move to further in the budget process. But what you have before you should be a representation of the step and grade. and a projection of what that would look like in the fiscal year 24-25, based on a proposed, I shouldn't say proposed, a projected 4% increase in that cost because of the change in steps.
And so what we will be doing, just to clarify even further, is as we receive the information from the Department of Human Resources, we will actually have every employee's salary as it is now, with the director going to the step and grade guidance and putting that number prorated for the period of time that they've been with the city. And that's the number that will ultimately be included in the budget. And if after that information is included in the budget, that commissioners decide that you want to do more, that would have to be, as the city manager stated, a separate action that would have to be said and approved by the commissioners. So the number that you will ultimately receive from finance is going to be based upon the study with no increase, just the amount that's in the study.
No colas. Colas.
No
separate.
cola.
No
No,
colas.
no increase like cola thing.
And if I could just add one quick thing, if you look at the general fund alone from 2023-24 fiscal year to this fiscal year, there's a 14% increase in the expenditures. What we're projecting in this budget, just as a target to get the commission off and running on the budget process, is only a 4% increase compared to what was done last year, which was a 14% increase year over year.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, Commissioner Jones? Or statements?
No, ma'am, I just wanted those points spoke on today. Thank you.
Good point.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Conley.
Okay.
I have my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Borum.
Yes, well, while we're on the salaries and not on the salaries, but the overall operating budget look like it appears that it's a 4% across the board, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then our total budget last year was like 96, somewhere 96 million in the 90s. Total
But it
budget.
was 80-something million. Last year.
Did it go down?
I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
Not
but
that total.
But irregardless of that, just when you think about the operating standpoint altogether, just operating alone, just let's say throw a number out there, 90 million. Okay, if you do 4% of that, that would be 3.6 million, something along those lines, right? So
correct.
So question is our revenue, are we bringing in enough revenue just to even do some of the things that we're asking are being presented to the commission? And also to add to that, a compound thing is if we do salaries in addition to that, so you got, if it even was 71 million, 70 million or whatever the general fund was, so you're looking at $2.8 million. And then you got, on top of that, you want to add the salary increases in there as well. So when you start doing those things and looking at revenue streams, are we offsetting that anyway by the additional revenues that we're getting? Are we just doing things? It look like it's kind of easy blanket kind of thing to do to put before the commission. I would like to see people. I would like to see things well thought out a little bit better than just to put it before the commission to vote on. And it sounds good, but is it really something that is realistic for the commission to be able to say, hey, I feel good about doing these things because it's a real need? And looking at the departments, each department, and seeing if they are performing like they need to as it relates to budgeting. Not every department may even need to get a 4% increase in their operational expenses and other things. So we need to look at all these different things in a more comprehensive way, in my opinion.
So
I
if
agree
I
with
could respond to
Commissioner-
that.
And I do, before you respond, I'm sorry. I have to agree with Commissioner Borum on that. I already was saying we're moving a little bit too fast. I do have tons of questions, although we had our one-on-ones. I'm sorry. But I am on board with what Commissioner Borum said, as well as Commissioner Jones, pointing out those the overarching departments and the job descriptions. If we kind of preface the conversations prior to going in that, I think it'll help with number one, transparency and understanding what that looks like. So.
Thank you. Mr. Bell.
Sure. So a very good question and points that you brought in your commentary. What we are doing now is not requesting that the commission take a vote. We are going through an exercise that is focused only on expenses. It's a very good point to point out again that this does not include revenues. And once we go through the exercise on expenses, there is a come to Jesus moment, if you will, once we look at projected revenues, and we have to balance the expenses, the proposed expenses, and the desired expenses against what the projected revenues are.
Right.
And that's why we've, Ms. Carty has put together a budget schedule to take us through the process of step one. What are the goals and objectives, plans, programs that the commission would like to see reflected in the budget? Come back with a more refined idea of what those expenses look like, and then marry that to what the projected revenues are.
Exactly.
And once you have to do that balancing to understand if we're off by, if there's a gap of $2 million, what programs do you want to reduce, or what programs do you want to eliminate in order to bridge that hypothetical $2 million gap?
Correct.
Did you want to add?
And that's why when I first started, I said, look, this is not your real budget. This is just to really get input from the commissioners, so we can understand what initiatives, what programs, whatever it is that you would like to see in the budget. We are still receiving information in order to give you a more realistic budget. Like, for instance, we're in the midst of revenue projections. We're also receiving information from the state. We have not even yet received our trim information. So there's a lot of information that we don't have yet. This day, a matter of fact, at the beginning, I mentioned how far ahead we are of where we normally start. Where we are today, we normally do not start that until July 20th. So we're almost 6 weeks ahead of what we would normally be doing. I'm not sure if this is because there's a summer schedule and we don't want meetings in July. I don't know what it is, but on our side, we appreciate receiving information from commissioners so that the next draft that you will receive, it will have the revenue projections as stated. It will also have the salary information perfected, which will tie to the step and grade analysis as well. And so primarily today, we just wanted to be certain that we received from the commissioners the guidance that you want us to have to prepare a budget that will be inclusive of your directive. And that was the primary reason for today.
So we're at step one, and we're just gonna.
Very much
moving
step
along
one.
Very early on.
Yep. And we're at step one early. I mean, early to the point that the year-to-date information is May 31. And traditionally, you would want year-to-date information as of July 15. So to that extent, this is a very early step, but the reason why we took the step, we want to be certain that we are responsive to the guidance from the commissioners. Also, the budget for last year that was approved was $71,255,483. And to the commissioner's point, we are limited by our scarce resources. So we're still going to be limited to revenue potential, as you have stated.
Any additional comments? Ms. Connie?
I'll have a brief comment, and I
Thank
think
you.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
My hand was raised, so I didn't just want to I let it down because they addressed both of my concerns in it. I'm of the, and kind of how we did in the CRA meeting, I'm proposed to have those things in there and not need it than to need it and not have them in there at this early stage. So I appreciate them for bringing us the whole package instead of a package. But I do agree with the fellow commissioners with regards to making sure that this is something sustainable. But again, I'm appreciative also of making sure that this information is at the very forefront. So if we need to file down, we have the ability to file down.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also want the commissioners to note that the improvements that the city manager mentioned about being able to identify those divisions that are under an umbrella, the next budget will reflect that. That's inclusive of public works as well. So if we continue on page 23. Oh, we were already there. Cultural arts, cultural services. So continue on page 24, and that's parks and recreation. And on page 25, the personnel budget for the current year is 178,750. And for operating is 235,000. And there will be changes in this when we bring it back because we have things like Brunson that will be reflected with maintenance here. And also on page 26, possibly a van and also park improvement. This year, the budget has 129,000. So we'll be looking at that line item pretty carefully. So for this particular department, 001-115, and that department is Parks and Rec. The total budget for the current year is 835,000. And so we expect at least 800. Well, maybe I skipped. Wait a minute. Hold up. Sorry. 1 second, please. Okay, on page 26, total budget, 614,000 for this year and at least 639,000 for next year. Price Martin, we expect that to kind of remain level, but I think that there's construction and so forth that will take place. So the cost might be less. And then finally, we're on page 27, general fund transfers and reserves. Again, I'm not going to look at that too much because those items have to be calculated after we have a real precise budget in general fund to calculate the reserve section. So moving on to page 29 is airport. And airport is going to be more level than anything else. There may be a decision unit for personnel, maybe, as they are rearing up because they've had all of the improvements in this year. And next year, they expect to have increased activity. So on page 29, personnel is 394,000. And for this year, on page 30, the operating budget, 1,217,000. And so even though actual is only 429,000 on page 30, and I think that's because of some major thing that was not operating, but now that's all been restored. So we expect to have normal operations at airport. And so page 31 is continuing with the airport, and the final number, it's probably going to remain level, not too much changes with airport. It's because this is going to be a year of going back to normalcy. So it's 4,546,000. And we expect it to kind of be level this coming year. For water fund, the personnel on page 32 is 916,000. There are going to be some changes in this particular budget, but we expect it to kind of level out. On page 33. So to the extent that the capital outlay is funded by grants, that's what our major capital expenditures are, funded by grants. But the part that's funded by the city's revenue stream would be like that's capital outlay where it says the 466,000. But when we come back to you, we will have decision units, we will have specific numbers, and that's how that go. Sewer wastewater plant, that name might soon be reclamation facility. And the personnel for that is for this year, 1,012,000. And operating expenses on page 34, 721,000. We do expect capital improvements to be done. And most of it will be grant funded. The part that would come from revenue stream would be the part that says capital improvements, 590,000. I believe it's going to be similar to this year, but there will be some decision units in that area. And starting at the bottom of page 34, you have the grant activity. And that will be confirmed and submitted to you with definite numbers with the next draft. So the total budget for water for this year is $6,061,000. And if we did overall 4%, which we now understand this is going to be brought in line with revenues, so $6,300,000. We're moving on to page 36, and that's waste sewer distribution. Personnel for this year budget, $957,000, and we've spent like year to date, $540,000 in personnel. We expect to at least spend $800,000 this year. And operating expenses, the total is $259,000 on page 37. We have spent $124,000 year to date. So we expect to spend at least $186,000. And the capital outlay, this is a combination of grant funded and funded by revenue stream. So the total is $3,484,000, and that will come back to you more specific because with the grant, we will compare what have we spent this year, and then the balance will be reflected in the new year. And then if there are new grants, that will also be included here. So in both capital outlay and grants, that will come back to you more specific based upon what we really have and what we really expect in the next fiscal year. Page 38 reflects that this department total budget is $13,077,000. And then we're still continuing with water administration. The budget for personnel is $312,000 and operating is $367,000. So this is really administration for the water department because it's including things like liability insurance, equipment maintenance, that kind of stuff. And so it's $367,000. And going to page 40, these are the various loans. And again, the next budget that you receive it will really reflect the loans that we'll be having to service in the next fiscal year. Some of these loans have been paid off. And there are also maybe one new loan, maybe. Nope. Yeah, I think so. One. So on page 41, water fund as a whole, all the water related costs. This year budget is 28 million. But look, we've only spent 8 million year to date. And by the end of the fiscal year, we expect to spend 12 million. So you say, well, why do we have 28 million? We only spent 8 million because a lot of the cost is related to the grants. And so we will go more in detail with that with the next budget. Going to page 42 is the golf course. And for 2024, there are no personnel, just operating. So the budget is 27,000, a slight increase. Operating expense for golf is on page 43. The budget is 131,000. The biggest amount is the rental and leases to keep the equipment up. And then we have capital improvements anticipated to be 25,000. So the total budget last year, the year that we're living in right now, is 184,000. And we expect to at least go to 191. Again, this will come back more perfected as well, mainly with the lease number that may have gone down slightly. And on page 44, we're at sanitation fund. So the budget for personnel is 160,000 the year we're living in right now. And operating is 26,000. So we're looking at 186,000. And this is like the maintenance part of it. On page 45, we're looking at personnel for sanitation. That's 1,252,000. And with the next presentation, we'll also have a listing, let me write that down, of all positions by department. So that way you'll know like what makes up, for instance, in this case, 1,252,000. On page 46, continuing with sanitation, the operating cost is 900, the budget 984,000, and we're spending pretty well. We're at 606,000. We anticipate 909,000. And the capital outlay, that's those, we bought something there, the truck, I believe it was the truck, sanitation, and we may have to do one more capital outlay in this year. The debt servicing will come back more precise. And finally, on page 47, we do have transfers in this department, sanitation. Okay, the budget for this year is 336,000. We've already transferred out 224,000. So we anticipate that same relationship for next year. And finally, we're at TIF, which we went over. But again, this is just the expenses at that time. So the budget for this year is 985,000 for the downtown TIF. And for South Historic, well, actually at the top of page 49, it's really 1,526,000 for downtown. And South Historic, the budget, total budget on page 50 for this year is 434,000. We've only spent 19,000. And then finally, North Historic, the budget is 126,000 on page 50. We've only spent 34,000, and this is as of May 31. So these numbers can change greatly between now and the end of the fiscal year. On page 51, the ARPA, and I brought an update with me for ARPA. Okay, I have it. Thank you. Where the budget was 1,972,000, and as of May 31, we spent 353,000. But I wanted to kind of update that because we do have an encumbrance out there for 203,000. So as of today, we can say the ARPA funds, we have about 567,000 that we've spent, or of the 1,972,000 between spent and encumbered. And so currently today, the balance for ARPA funds that is still sitting there available for your guidance is 1,404,503. And I would like to send that to you just so that you'd be aware. On page 53 is Better Place. Better Place tend to be project intensive to benefit the entire city. There are very few operating, just 60,000 in operating expenses for professional services or grant app fees. And we've only spent 5,000 of the budget at 60,000. And then for the projects, which we call capital outlay, the budget was 5,204,000, and we've spent 1,533,000. The next budget will reflect more accurately how much we've spent and also what we intend to spend by the end of the fiscal year. That's where we are now. On page 54, we're still in Better Place. We have debt servicing there. And we will actually have debt service for the public works building. We will have that there. And and we may have also the fire trucks. So this will be more precise when it comes back in. The grant matches, 7,403,000, but we've only spent 391,000. So going to page 55, Better Place budget, 12,880,000. Actual year to date, only 2 million has been spent. So activity is going to increase, I believe, these last 3 months for Better Place. And so we will give you precise numbers based upon grants and projects for Better Place with the next draft. And so that's it for going through the line by line budget.
Does anyone have any additional questions, commissioners?
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you, Commissioner Borum. Commissioner Campbell?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Commissioner McCaskill?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. Just wanted to say that I will provide city manager with the listing of everything that the commissioners have requested, and we will do an effort to tick to include it in.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bell, is there anything further?
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just a reminder that the next budget workshop will be June 20th.
Okay, thank you. With that said, without anything else that anybody has to say, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Commissioner McCaskill? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very